teachers, I went to the rally in Tally, rally in Tally. And people, they hold up these protest signs.
Right.
But I'm asking, what is that about? What's next? What is the action item that's going to take place after that to make sure that that filters down to the kids?
Well, I think it's going to keep going until our voices are heard, not just locally, but statewide. And also, I think that rally and tally is also about high-stakes testing, which our pay and our performance is tied into the performance of these children, or our students, on these high-stakes tests.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I always, as a certified ESC teacher, I have kids who learn in different ways and express themselves in different ways. And my personal view on that is I try to differentiate instruction a lot with them so that I can reach all of their learning needs. Now, if we're going to differentiate instruction or we're going to teach to them, some of them are visual learners, kinesthetic learners, auditory learners, why are we going to test them in that one way? Why can't we test them in different ways to show that, hey, they're creative enough and they understand the concepts we're trying to teach them or the standards that we're teaching them. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be pen and pencil, reading or writing.
But do you think that teacher pay or bonus, which is probably not a whole lot of money, because there never seems to be enough money to pay teachers, and I think teachers should be paid more money. Right. But how do you feel about student assessment, testing being tied to
well, like
teacher pay?
I'm for assessment if it forms or makes a decision about instruction. Now, our biggest issue is a lot of these assessments are driving instruction, but we don't get to see the reality or the scores of it back to say, hey, for example, if my son takes a test and then the teacher grades the test and say he got this wrong or he got this wrong, it tells the teacher and him that, hey, he's weak in this area, this is what he needs to fix. However, on the state level wide, we don't get that feedback instantaneously.
In a timely manner.
Correct. And not only just that too, we don't get a chance to realize that, hey, what standards are we hitting? What are we reaching the kids? What are they lacking? Where are they deficient? Most of the time we get these scores back once they're out of our classroom.
And it's not even just that we don't get it back in a timely manner. We don't get the tests back at all. We get back data points, but we have a statute that protects the tests from being released to us. It's confidentiality of assessment instruments. It is written in law.
But what's behind that? I mean,
well,
exactly.
As we talked about before, last time, it's really about greed and privatization is my position, and I won't be redundant and talk about that again. But until we remove that statutory requirement that protects those assessments from being released to teachers and parents, really, we can't really have substantive assessment that informs instruction. In our elementary grades now, we have what are called multi-select assessments. So that means a kid will have a question that says, choose the best answers, right? So sometimes they used to be multi-choice, multiple choice, right? So you pick the right answer. Well, now they're multi-select. There could be 3 right answers. Well, if a kid chooses 2 of the 3 right answers, that is wrong. Well, that doesn't mean that the kid doesn't know the standard, but they got it wrong. Now, I want to see that test to know, does my child actually know how to do the math problem? And did he just choose 2 of the 3 right answers, or does he not know it at all? The confidentiality of online assessment, or of assessment instruments statute, prevents me and the classroom teacher from seeing that. So we have such a large problem that it's bigger than just, well, we don't get it back in a timely manner. We don't get to see it at all.
Okay. But I think now, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that your voices are starting to be heard.
I agree. Did you hear?
Well, you know, Pam Stewart, she didn't go with the. Okay,
I thought you were.
Did not. Okay, no, she didn't go with the more, I guess, strict grading requirements. But and I know that you're not a big proponent of grading schools at all. Okay, which is fine. But it seems like they're starting to hear you guys slowly, right?
No, who is hearing us are people like Representative Mark Pafford, who's the House Minority Leader. He's hearing us. He is somebody who said, after the governor's State of the State address, he said he encourages parents to hear the voice of the opt-out movement, do the research, and he supports
Oh, you
parents
said the old word, so we're going to talk about it.
Opt out.
You
well,
went there.
If you want to talk about being heard, he's somebody who is hearing us, because as controversial as opting out once was, we now have elected officials who are saying what we are doing is in assessment is so far in the realm of crazy that we have people in the Florida House who are saying, you know what, parents, do your research. And he stood there and looked at the camera and said, I support parents who are making that bold decision.
Okay, I see Daniel there shaking his head. So, opt out.
Mm-hmm.
You support opt out.
Personally, as a parent,
yes, okay.
For my children. And a lot of parents that I've talked to and outside the classroom, there's this notion of it's going to hurt the school's grade. It's going to be, it's going to be detrimental to the school. Or some, I've even heard to the point where they're saying the school's not going to get funding because the kids are not taking the test, which is all not true at all. So, yes, they do. What's the category, Darcy?
If the school codes everything as it ought to, the kid receives an NR2. It means they didn't meet the attemptedness for the test. Essentially what they're doing is they're sending back a blank test. It is an act of civil disobedience. It's a choice that you make when you believe that what is happening is unjust.
Can I support some of you guys' policies without saying that?
You can do whatever you choose. As we do.
Because I want to know how we can all work together for the good of the kids. Because it's the kids, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I don't think was well articulated last time is this. Opting out for me as a parent and as an educator is not a goal. It is a last resort. You have to understand, this is not something I woke up and said, I want to send my 7- and 8-year-old children to school to have them sit there and stare at a test and send back blank tests. It is a last resort after years of lobbying my elected officials and after this is my 14th year teaching, and knowing that what we are doing in our classrooms is educational malpractice and doing everything that I know how to do within the political...
Specifically, what's education malpractice? Over-testing?
Not just over-testing, but using test data that in the wrong way, that even Pearson's own tests that we give our students says that it cannot be used in the way that we are using it. In other words, the tests that we are giving are not meant to be used to grade schools, to grade teachers, to grade districts. We are using the test data in the wrong way.
What are we supposed to be using it for?
We are supposed to be using it as a measure of one thing and one thing only: how much a student has learned the material that test is meant to be measured. And that is the only thing that we are supposed to be using it for, not to allocate funds to a school, certainly not to withhold funds from a school, and certainly not to grade schools so that we can assign property values, essentially, to our schools.
So it's okay to use assessment to drive instruction,
correct,
right? To make some instructional decisions. However, it shouldn't weigh so heavily that a kid thinks that, hey, if I don't pass this FSA, then I'm nothing. I can't be anything in life. Do you think that's how people are seeing it? And we have about 40 seconds. So give us that, and then we'll finish the conversation on the other side.
Based on the students I deal with, a lot of them are freshmen, and they do have to take the FSA.
Right.
They believe they have to take the FSA.
They believe they do. However, I have seen a lot of students who don't, and they have to take it every year, and they've just thrown their hands up to the point.
But do you think that kids feel that if they don't make that, the required score on the FSA, I know there are some graduation restrictions. Do you think that kids are saying, man, if I can't pass this test, I can't get into college, I can't get a job, you think, are students feeling that way?
Of course, because they get placed into remedial courses where all they do is prepare for a test, instead of doing what we ought to do, which is put them in courses that enhance their skill set.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to finish the second part of this conversation.